Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I think we're going to kick right off on our presentation. So really appreciate everyone on the line joining us to hear about the Grains Innovation Fund, project by Grain Farmers of Ontario. My name is Dana Dickerson. I'm the Manager of Market Development at Grain Farmers of Ontario. And I'm joined today by Peter Joe, who's the CEO of Sunrise Soya, who you can hopefully see on the screen alongside me. So today we want to give you a bit of a background introduction into who Grain Farmers of Ontario is, the work that we do, the crops that we produce, so that those of you who are interested in prospective applications have a bit more of a deeper understanding of what we're looking for and what we do. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the fund, how it works, but really we want to have an engaging opportunity for a conversation with you folks and answer any questions that you might have about how the fund works or what kind of projects we might be looking for this year. So who are we? Who's Grain Farmers of Ontario? We're Ontario's largest commodity organization. We represent 28,000 farmer members across the province. And these farmer members grow barley, corn, oats, soybeans, and wheat across 6 million acres in the province. We have a mission to build, defend, promote an inclusive, innovative, and sustainable business environment that enables our grain farmer members the opportunity to prosper. And our vision is thriving farms, responsible production, and trusted grain farmers. So just to dive into that crop representation a little bit more deeply, these are the 5 crops that we represent, that we're mandated to represent. So that includes barley, corn, oats, soybeans, and wheat. The largest ones are corn and soybeans. So you can see there in terms of our production tons and the acres that we represent across those 2 big crops. Wheat comes in 3rd place, and we primarily grow winter wheat within the province of Ontario. So slightly different to other markets across Canada, where they primarily are growing spring wheat. A lot of our wheat is planted in the autumn and then harvested in and around July. So it overwinters and has slightly different applications, which we'll get into in a minute. We do also grow some spring wheat though as well within the province, particularly in the northern and eastern areas. Oats and barley are our 2 smaller crops, but are definitely of equal interest to us in seeing opportunities for those crops grow. So I've just included a brief slide in here on an overview of our grain markets across all crops. So every 3 years, we do a study where we investigate for each crop individually what kind of applications those crops are going into. And then we produce sort of the study that looks at the averages of market utilization across 3 years. You can find this slideshow on the GFO website. I've included a link there, and we'll send this slide deck out afterwards so folks can explore that where they wish. But it's all on our market development page of our Grain Farmers of Ontario website. And you can look at this information across all crops, but also across each individual crop. So just briefly here, you can see that the majority of our crops, about 72%, are utilized domestically within the Ontario market and here in Canada. We do export a good number of our crops, and for some of those crops, they're more export oriented than others. But in general, about 28% of our total crop production is exported. And then looking at the domestic utilization, a very small amount goes towards seed production. A large amount goes towards animal feed, so about 39% goes into feed, and you can see the breakdown across different livestock groups. About 19 or 20% goes into ethanol or industrial production, and a lot of that is going to be coming from corn going into ethanol, but some of it is also biodiesel, and it's also across other industrial applications like solvents and chemicals. And then 12% is food for human consumption. So all of these markets are really important to us, and each of them has different sort of different levels of premiums and different applications and areas that we're interested in seeing growth in. Certainly, I would say across all of these that we're interested in seeing growth. So I'll just touch briefly on a couple end uses, just so that folks who are looking to be a little bit inspired can understand just how versatile our grains are. And really the interesting thing about the Grains Innovation Fund is it's very broad, because our markets are very broad. So we're looking for applications from every industry, whether it is kind of the human consumption food industry, whether it's from those involved in livestock production or marketing of livestock products, or those in the industrial space who are producing different alcohols or chemicals or other products. So for barley, the main kind of current destinations for barley are the feed markets. So for beef and dairy cattle going into feed there. For food, we see dehulled, pearled, pot, toasted, flaked, and malted barley. That goes into all kinds of different food applications, including things like beer, but also pet food. For corn, on the food side, a lot of our corn goes into corn sweeteners, different ingredient products, including forms of citric acid, but also beverage alcohol. And it's a little known secret that the majority of Canadian whiskey is actually built on a backbone of Ontario corn. So when we're looking at a product like rye whiskey, very often that is going to have a large percentage of the mash bill, or the makeup of that whiskey bottle, is going to be a corn-based spirit. And then a little bit of rye alcohol is sprinkled in for some additional flavoring. On the feed side for corn, it's going into all kinds of different livestock applications. So we've got swine, beef, dairy, and poultry. And then about 30% of our corn production goes into industrial alcohols, corn oil, and ethanol fuel. So that's a significant market for corn for us. On the oat side for food, we see flakes and flour. So the likes of Quaker Oats is a significant end-use market for our food-grade oat production. And then for feed, going into beef and dairy calves primarily, and then also pet food and horse food for other applications. For soybeans, we tend to be very export-oriented when it comes to soybeans, and it's another perhaps secret for some that Ontario produces some of the best soybeans in the world, and a lot of those are exported to Asian markets like Japan or Taiwan or China or Malaysia, Indonesia, where our soybeans are really highly prized for their food-grade applications. So we do have commodity beans going into crush for things like vegetable oil, but we also have identity preserved soybeans going into things like tofu, tempeh, soy milk, natto, and increasingly meat alternative products, because soy has incredible protein story. Also soy protein isolates, you can see here kind of an example on the side. The protein applications for soy are really significant, and we're seeing a lot of interest domestically here in producing more products to go into the sports nutrition space or other protein applications. And we also have some great examples here in the province of, and even outside of the province, of companies that have taken note of the high quality soybeans that we produce and are making meat alternative products or other products like tofu domestically here as well. And we'll hear from Peter in a little bit about what Sunrise does in the market and how they've interacted with the Grains Innovation Fund previously. On the feed side, our soybeans also go into poultry, swine, beef, cattle, and dairy cow feed. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also industrial applications like biodiesel, primarily used within the mining industry currently, but there's a lot of interest in biodiesel production expanding across North America, given the increasing demand for low carbon fuels, but also everything from candles to paints to solvents and even cosmetics like nail polish and nail polish remover can be made with soy and is made with soy in the province. On the wheat side, our wheat goes into all kinds of applications used as an ingredient. We obviously produce flour, and that goes into things like pastries, confectionery, breads, noodles, and breakfast cereals. So we have 4 different classes of flour. in Ontario, and the largest class, Ontario soft red or Canadian Eastern soft red winter, primarily is used for kind of more of those confectionery type products like pastries and cakes, where it has kind of the right application or the right kind of quality metrics for those applications. And then some of our higher protein flours will go into products that require that, like breads. On the feed side, we do have feed grade wheat going into poultry, swine, beef, cattle, and dairy cows. And then there's other applications as well. So we had a project I'll speak to in a little bit, where the bran from wheat production was actually upcycled into a pet litter product. I haven't mentioned throughout this, but the Grains Innovation Fund also applies to crop residues. So not just the grains that we produce, but things like corn stover or wheat straw. We are also interested in seeing applications for products that utilize those as well. So we previously had another project in the past that saw wheat straw being used as a new product for animal bedding. So just to briefly talk about, what market development does, what my team does, because this really sets the objectives for what we want to see the Grains Innovation Fund supporting. So our job is to identify and support market opportunities, both here domestically in the market. As I mentioned earlier, about 72% of our market is domestic. We also do that work abroad, so involved in trade missions and keeping an eye on the export markets for our wheat. We want to protect those markets, and we want to ensure the viability of those key industries that I mentioned earlier as a market for our grains. So really the Grains Innovation Fund is as much about supporting the industries that are our customers as it is for seeing the return and value for our farmers' products and growth of the demand there. We want to make sure that those domestic markets are diversified. So the innovation component of the Grains Innovation Fund is to make sure that we're ahead of the curve of new applications that are for our grains that are coming out in the world, and ensuring that we're supporting the industry and developing those here at home domestically. I mentioned export markets. Our team also engages in sustainability programs, so that sits within our team, and we're interested in opportunities that align with our sustainability objectives within Grain Farmers of Ontario. And ultimately, we're here to represent the interests of our farmer members. So we are funded, and the Grains Innovation Fund is funded by farmer members providing checkoff when they're selling their grains into the grain handling system. So we have a duty of care to make sure that any projects that we undertake are really going to deliver that value for our farmer members at the end of the day. And finally, we have a role in building awareness of the quality and versatility of Ontario grains. So projects that can, support that through a consumer lens or a trade lens are always of interest to us. So I'll just give a brief overview of the Grains Innovation Fund. I'm assuming if you're on this call, you've learned a little bit about it or you've heard a bit about it, but we'll give a quick overview. And then of course, at the end, if there's questions, we can walk through those. But it is an initiative of our team, and it's really there to support the development of new and reformulated products, processes, and activities and more that have potential to expand the market for our grains. So it is quite a broad remit of the fund, and we like to keep it that way so that we can really attract lots of new ideas and innovative approaches from the industry. The fund was initially launched in 2010, and we've supported 63 projects to date. And eligible projects can receive up to 60% of the cost of the project, up to a maximum of $50,000. So an individual project, the maximum that can be contributed from Grain Farmers of Ontario's Grains Innovation Fund is $50,000, or a maximum of 60% of the cost of the project. So you'll see when you're going through the application form, we want the project applicants to have some skin in the game as well. So we are looking for applicants to kind of give us an idea of the total costs, and the amount that we're able to contribute would be up to 60% of the total cost. So for eligibility, so we accept projects from all manners of groups. So from industry associations to manufacturers to even we've had economic development groups in the past make applications to us. So we're really not fussy about who applies to us. But ultimately, they need to demonstrate that the project is going to have some direct utilization of one of our Ontario crops: barley, corn, oats, soybeans, and wheat, or crop residues. So there needs to be some sort of direct linkages to that. We have set a minimum requirement of 40 metric tons a year, though there have been examples in the past where we've been able to exclude that requirement if the project really clearly demonstrates to us that it's going to in some way drive utilization increases in the future. So it can be a smaller amount, but it really has to have a clear narrative about how it's going to actually grow opportunities for those Ontario grains specifically. The project must also meet one of the following criteria. So it needs to open new markets for Ontario grains or grain residues, expand the utilization of and demand for Ontario grains and grain residues, promote our grains as the best choice, or support development of novel value-added products derived from Ontario grains, and or increase the value and the premiums returned to farmers for Ontario grains or grain residues. So again, I know that can be quite broad. We like to keep it that way. And the best way of, if you have an idea in mind and you're not sure if we're gonna see it as meeting one of these objectives, the best way to figure that out is to have a conversation with us. So we definitely invite all applicants to come back to us, you know, prior to your application, submitting your application. If you wanna kind of pitch the idea to our team to have a bit of a review and discussion and get some steers, we're happy to do that at any time. So to bring some of these examples to life, we've got a list here of some previous projects. We can't necessarily identify all of them. Some of them, you know, we've done case studies in the past with different partners, like what we'll hear from Sunrise Soya in a little bit. But we can kind of talk in broad terms about some of these. So examples of what we've seen in the past, we've had folks look at identifying and commercializing new product applications for byproducts from Ontario soybean-based tofu production, which is what Peter's going to talk to in a moment. We saw an example of marketing an Ontario wheat-based pelletized straw for animal bedding and garden use. So this was sort of a novel type of animal bedding where the straw was being produced into a pelletized product that hadn't really been produced in the market before. And we worked with that company to support their commercialization of that product and to do some marketing for it. Promoting the influence of Ontario grains and Ontario corn-fed beef in the Japanese market. So this is another one that we've got a case study for. This is where the Ontario corn-fed beef program worked with us on a project where they really went over on a trade mission to Japan and really promoted the Ontario corn-fed beef story there and the value that Ontario corn contributes to the quality of Ontario corn-fed beef. So that was more one where they were applying for funding for a marketing activity. Transforming brand byproducts from milling wheat into a new sustainable cat litter product. So again, this was looking at the feasibility of taking bran that is left over from when local wheat was being milled and commercializing that into a brand new product that was a cat litter product. And then also, again, some marketing activities within that application included development of a website and some marketing activities to launch that product. Developing and marketing a new innovative soybean-based tempeh product. So this was a company that had an existing production of tempeh products, and they wanted to create a brand new product and undertake some marketing at trade shows of that, so local food and drink trade shows. as well as some social media marketing, and I think doing some in-store activities as well. Promoting upcycled grain products through an upcycled food festival. So this relates to what Peter's going to be talking about in his project in a moment. And testing new processes for creating cleaner label products made with Ontario grains. So this was another project where we worked on a pilot scale demonstrations of being able to process soybeans or other products in a different way that use a different approach, and created a new product that would appeal to a new market. So just a quick overview on the process. So we launched the fund at the beginning of October. Applications are due on the 28th of October. And then between the 29th of October and the 16th of December, we do some internal reviews. So kind of just to break that down, my team will review the applications once they've come in. We will come back to applicants if we have any questions, if things aren't clear or we want anything expanded upon, kind of during the first couple weeks of November. And then we actually have a market development committee that is made up of farmer members who've signed confidentiality agreements with GFO, and they are delegates of Grain Farmers of Ontario. And then they will review the applications as well. We will meet on the 13th of December and do a bit of a review meeting where we go through each project, discuss the opportunities and merits of each, and then decide on how we break up the fund in that meeting, decide which projects are successful and which ones the committee is not able to go forward with. And then that will go to a board motion and get approved by our board of directors that same week. And following the 19th of December is when we should know which projects are fully approved by the board, and that funding motions will have been approved and will inform candidates at that point. Then there's a process by which we go back and forth with the candidates to develop basically a contract between Grain Farmers of Ontario and the candidate, in which the approved candidates will outline in the contract the activities that they've proposed that they're going to undertake over the next year, or sometimes they're multi-year projects. We will then put in the contract that we will make payments from the fund based on the completion of those activities. And that's a negotiation process that goes back and forth kind of over that month-long period between December and January. And then as soon as those contracts are finalized, the projects are up and running. And as candidates demonstrate proof to us that the activities have been completed, then we release the funds. And sometimes we'll do that, we'll break it up. So you might complete, you might have 3 activities within your project. And as you complete each activity, we release a portion of the funds. If some upfront funding is required, we can work that into the contract as well and have some initial release of funds. But it really depends on each project and what the needs are for each one. And we go back and forth on that. So now I'm going to pass over to Peter, who's just going to talk through a little bit about the projects that we worked on with him last year. This really was a capstone project, I would say, for the Grains Innovation Fund. We're really proud of it, and it completely surpassed our expectations. And I think really aligned to many of the things that we're looking to see in the fund. So I'll pass it over to Peter to talk through a little bit about his project.
Yes, thanks, Dana, for inviting me to be part of the webinar today. Good morning, everyone. I'm in Vancouver. It's early morning for me, but it's great to talk to all of you. Yeah, I'm happy to speak about a project that we had with the support of the Grain Farmers organization, the Grain Innovations Funds program, and which we also partnered with the Provision Coalition at that time, and now it's known as the Anthesis Provision. Our company, we started in Vancouver in the mid-50s. That my parents started a company, and we've been purchasing Ontario soybeans for the production of tofu for all these years being in the soya foods business. We now have 3 plants, 2 in the West, in Vancouver and Delta, and 1 in Toronto. And we produce and sell our products across Canada and supplying all the retail stores. So when we make tofu, the byproduct or waste product that we have from the soybean processing to make soy milk is known as, we call it okara. Okara is a Japanese a name for the waste product, and we can call it soy pulp. But in Asia and in many countries, there are food applications for okara, but not so much in North America. So for many years, our company, myself, I thought, I keep thinking, what should we do with okara besides having it it's picked up for animal feed and for disposal. So with that interest and opportunity and desire to upcycle and make use of this ingredient that still has a lot of nutritional value and to reduce food waste and to be more sustainable, we decided to take up the opportunity to team up with Provision Coalition and with the support and help with the GFO program funding, that really helped us to bring in, allow us to bring in a network of other partners and companies to take our okara and to develop products from the okara and provide it to the marketplace. And so we had during the project, we had companies do R&D to test and develop and use okara, and all that sort of started getting into a bigger project to support the promotion of and launching of products through, and that resulted in all these social media and mainstream media as well. And of course, as Dana mentioned, a festival that also resulted from this project. So I think it ties back to what Dana's saying about how this program can really broadly support and a project, and there's a lot of sort of, call it flexibility to able to support any sort of innovation and marketing of products that come out of in this case products that using okara, which is going to be a different and new to the marketplace. So this project, it kind of started quite small and slow at first because it was to gather kind of the partners but with the funding and other partners seeing that as it can become a bigger project, it really helped to capture more resources and help with the overall project and reach. Just to fast kind of get to that, what do we do? So it became, we had noodle products that was R&D that we to incorporate okara into some, I guess a plant-based sort of products and muffins that was also made. And so that was, we were attracting retailers and food service, and they were the target customers for the products that our partners were able to utilize okara with. So really, again, this program really helped the company give us the help and support to test out the business opportunity to incorporate, in this case, our waste material for food products. And really, it gives sort of inspire us to say, look, there's a good possibility and for us to have more innovation in this area and to get more soy into people's diets in different forms. Now, in any project, and this was actually, again, as I said, it starts small, but it really got to a bigger project. It kind of encountered, challenges, and not everything went sort of perfectly as planned. But there's sort of, a lot of it, there was learnings, and it, for example, our products was quite perishable coming off our machinery and to deal with okara. And so, we had to deal with some logistical challenges of dealing with a perishable product. And then also timelines. Actually, our project, we did it through the pandemic period. And so that was in the beginning of last year, and through that year, there's a lot of just supply chain issues and other issues that really, from a timeline point of view, it kind of went longer than expected. But again, I think the GFO was and this program has that sort of a good sort of flexibility and understanding of the activities and how sometimes things take longer than planned. And also in our process, like we took out quite a bit. So that's another thing too, is that sometimes we have to kind of really have partners understand the whole process and how everything has to be kind of tied in. And so sometimes when we do some things a little bit too much or too quick, it can cause some issues. And also it's important, again, back to the funding and all that, is the project in terms of budgeting and all that. It's important to have some, you can say even some contingency, because how things cost and expenses can be higher than budgeted. So in summary, the program really allowed us to take some chances and risk. I think that's really all about trying to innovate and try new things, and with that financial support. And it kind of helped us focus on a project and a program with its budget and timelines. And so that was good. So in the future for our company, we hope to be able to, with this program, helping to build a bit of the groundwork or foundation for us to look at other things to deal with our waste. There's some other things that I can't really say that we could be actually doing right now, but I think that's where it's exciting that that there's a program like the Green Innovations Fund to support this kind of initiatives. Okay, so again, I'm very appreciative of the program, and hopefully all of you can have some good projects that the funding can support you with. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was great. And, like, we're so proud of this project. I think it was a perfect example of, something that had that element of innovation. And it, you were already an established customer of Ontario soybeans, but you were looking at doing something that was going to create kind of a completely new market opportunity. And equally, I think, got such significant profile in the media around Ontario soy, and aligned our farmers' story with a really great sustainability story, which is something that I know our farmers are really passionate about, reducing food waste and the circular food system. So I think, just like you say, I don't know that we anticipated when we set out to do this project just how big it would grow. And it kind of became a, just an incredible trajectory. So I equally don't want to overwhelm other folks on the line who might have smaller projects than this. Not every project is going to get 10 million media impressions for sure, and we completely appreciate that. We're really open to projects big and small. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the project will be assessed on, the relevancy to the Ontario grain marketing opportunity, and how innovative it is and how much it inspires our farmer members. So really grateful to have Peter join us today and provide just a bit of an insight into what a great project can look like. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. Really, we're at your disposal. If you've got questions that you'd like to ask us, you can either type them in the chat or feel free to also raise your hand. And I think my colleague Sabrina on the line is going to help me out here with if we do have any questions. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And equally, if folks, aren't comfortable asking your question in this venue, like I said, we will, our details will be sent out to folks who signed up, and we're happy to kind of address questions individually. So I see I've got a question from Kevin Montgomery here. It looks like, Kevin, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Dana. Just kind of following up Peter's
Mhm.
presentation and the 40,000 metric ton requirement. You could argue that, I don't know, um, like if you're utilizing waste, you're not really creating new soybean acres. He's using a byproduct from existing soybean processing acres. But obviously you guys liked the project and accepted that. So I'm assuming other projects that look at waste usage would be acceptable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we looked at it from the perspective of, it's not always possible to do that exact math of, is this going to lead to an increase in acres of soybeans? And we think about all of our crops and, we have a fixed number of arable acres within the province as it is, right? But we can look at growing yield and all that sort of stuff. But I think we looked at it from the perspective of that these were going to be new products that would be appreciated by consumers and interested be grown for them. And if Sunrise Soya could commercialize that Okara product and new demand for those products made from Okara could be further generated, then potentially it could grow their utilization of soybeans and get them to grow more consumer demand, which would then translate into increased production. But Peter, I don't know if you want to comment on any of that. If I hit the mark on that kind of response?
Yeah, I think it's overall the increased awareness of soy and more products and more availability and this whole sort of tying into the whole plant-based foods and widening I think some of the products rather than like our products are sold in the tofu section, but now a product like Okara will be sold in a different section. So this captures more consumers and consumption and awareness, and that we've been marketing tofu for so many years now. That's we know it is a slow build, and you're just promoting the awareness and usage, and because not everybody likes to, let's say, just buy a block of tofu and cook it. They don't know what to do, so they oftentimes like to buy something that has soy or tofu in it or some other incorporation. So it's sort of it's a marketing angle to promote overall the awareness of soy and in this case tofu, or in this case a tofu byproduct.
And I would add that, like, as I said earlier, so many of our food grade soybeans are exported to international markets. And we have a real strong interest in seeing more of those soybeans being appreciated here at home in our domestic market and building out kind of appetite from consumers and capacity for further processing. I see a question in the chat from Azra. So thanks for the valuable information. I have a quick question. Does the program have any specifications on project duration? That's a great question. So not necessarily. We do like to see projects being able to be kind of concluded in a relatively timely manner, so that we can actually kind of see that impact and make sure that from an accounting perspective that we're utilizing those funds within a period that makes sense for our finance team. But I would say we've seen projects that can run from 1 to 3 years. I think the really important thing is making sure that, like, the activities that are anticipated to be done are feasible within that time frame, and that farmers can see evidence and proof of the activity being done within a relatively reasonable time frame. So I'd say if you have kind of a concept that's a longer term one, have a chat with us, let us know, and we can kind of give some feedback on whether that would make sense for an application. I would also say, similar to what Peter was saying earlier, during the pandemic, there were a lot of projects that just weren't that had been envisioned back, you know, in 2019 applications for 2020, and they just weren't feasible to execute during the pandemic. So we did see a number of project extensions during that time. And, you know, certainly our understanding of those sorts of circumstances. All right, I don't think I see more questions in the chat. Are there any other questions that folks want to ask? Feel free to raise your hand.
Hi, this is Austin speaking. Couldn't find the raise hand button here. Sorry. I had a couple questions for you on some of those parameters for the getting the full investment from GFO. Is that a good question for now?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So yeah, I just wanted to confirm that first, the minimum quantity that you guys are kind of looking for is was 40 metric tons, not 40,000. Is that correct? So you're looking for somebody
correct.
to
Yeah,
create
did
a
I say
project.
40,000?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so 40 metric tons. So you're looking to get somebody to make a truckload of product that is benefiting everything. So, okay, that makes sense for my first question. And then the second question, within that 60% of project costs or $50,000 maximum investment from GFO, what are you allocating that towards? Are there exceptions, limitations? Obviously you want the person with the innovation to put some skin in the game, like you said. Does this pay for labor? Is labor excluded? It costs money to hire people. Sometimes certain investments don't account for that. And just wondering, is the innovator allowed to pay themselves, or do they have to hire that out? How does that investment dollar, how is it allowed to get spent? Are there any limitations on that?
That's a great question. Thanks, Austin. And yeah, sorry about that for the on the metric ton side. I didn't mean to throw people off there. I've been thinking about wheat production this week because I've got another presentation yesterday. So I've been thinking in the thousands and millions in other areas. So on the question about what it can go for. So again, we're fairly flexible on what kind of cost can be included. The one area that we've specifically chosen to not get involved in is capital investment in terms of like buildings and things like that. Like we don't want to be, we've decided to not be in the business of, you know, paying for someone to construct a site. That said, we have made investments in the past for investment into new machinery or equipment or technology. In terms of labor and those things like that, and sort of kind of self-payment, we have, I think in the past, funded costs of, you know, consultants or different kind of folks coming in to do various projects and the cost of that staffing. I think in terms of paying someone's, like if it's the project applicant, if it's their own salary, the committee might look at that, you know, with a specific lens of, you know, is this specific to this project and its success? So I think it's pretty open and flexible, and we'd probably want to, if it is a salary-based one or cost like that, we might want to just chat about it beforehand, just to make sure that like we're understanding exactly how the costs are being paid, and that when it goes to the committee meeting where all the final decisions are made, the committee has the best understanding of how that's going to be. So if there's something like that where it's a cost you're not quite sure about, have a chat with us, but certainly, you know, consultancy fees or specific project fees have been covered in the past. And what you would do is when you're completing the application, you would provide a breakdown of the specific cost that would be going into that. And then you would cover sort of the proportion that you as the organization would cover, and the percentage that you'd be looking for GFO to cover. But yeah, I would say like the cost should be associated with the delivery of the specific project, as opposed to just sort of ongoing, you know, operating costs sort of in general is typically where we like to sit. Okay, I see another question. And sorry, Austin, did that answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thanks. See another question in the chat from Jim. So it says the application we would be submitting would not be in the area of product development. Our focus would be on connecting businesses that create products with end users or consumers. Is that an area you would look at for grant support? So I would say, Jim, in principle, yes, I think we could look at that area. It would really depend on sort of the relevancy to the grain and making sure that, you know, the businesses that you're connecting, the businesses that create these products that you're connecting with end users is really relevant to grain production. So if it was, for example, supporting processors that utilize grains with consumers or other end users, that is really going to demonstrate growth for those processors and opportunities, and you can be specific about those being processors of Ontario grains, that would be great. I would say the committee generally looks really favorably on, you know, applicants who are aligned with, you know, someone who is actually utilizing that grain and makes that direct connection. Though, as I said, it's not always the case. In the example of Sunrise Soya, it's a great one because there were co-applicants on that project. So Sunrise Soya was the primary applicant, Provision Coalition was, you know, a co-applicant. So they kind of worked together, I think, on the application. And I would say, you know, Sunrise Soya being on there as the processor and being a party to that application really gave the committee that comfort that there would be someone aligned with the project who is already using Ontario soybeans and knows how to use them and is pursuing a project like that. Another piece of advice I would say is, you know, for projects that are very, very much at like the pre-commercialization startup stage, where there's kind of not a demonstration of involvement in the industry already to some extent, or it's such a novel project and, you know, you're really kind of pre-construction on a facility or something like that. You know, we do look at those projects, but it's important that the committee is able to consider that to be a viable project within a relevant time frame. So going back to that question about time frame, we've had applicants in the past who've had a really amazing novel idea, but they haven't been quite ready to commercialize it in, you know, with immediacy. So for those kinds of projects, I would either recommend that the project is looking at that feasibility perspective of what they're trying to achieve, and perhaps considering applying in a subsequent year. If they're not quite ready for it this year, they might have more success in the future. On that note, we do encourage you know, folks to apply with different projects every year. So we have supported companies over multiple years if they've applied one year and applied another year. And then sometimes just because a project doesn't get approved in a given year doesn't mean that you can't apply in a subsequent year. Sometimes we're spoiled for choice with projects and can't necessarily fund them all. So we definitely encourage multiple applications. The one final thing I would say too on that is it's okay for a single company to provide two discrete applications. So if you have two projects that are completely different from one another and are not related, so perhaps one is a product formulation development project and one is a marketing project for an established product that you have, you could submit those as two separate applications as opposed to a singular application if they are quite different, and we have seen that in the past. All right, any final questions from anyone? Sabrina, have I missed anything in the chat? I don't think so.
Nope, I think you've covered it all.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today, for your interest in the Grains Innovation Fund. A huge thank you to Peter for taking the time out of very early in the morning out in Vancouver and and joining us. I know we were very inspired by his project. I hope that you folks are as well. And as I mentioned, if anyone has any questions, please reach out to our team. Our contact details are on the website, and we will be following up with the recording of the webinar for those who want to have another listen again or who couldn't make it. So thanks for your time, and hope you all have a great day.